And welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to share my review of Call of Cthulhu No Time to Scream from Chaosium Inc. This is written by B.W. Holland, Bridget Jeffries, and C.L. Werner, with additional writing by James Coquillot and Mike Mason. And I do apologize if I've mispronounced any of those names. This 104-page hardcover with PDF, if you order through Chaosium Inc. or one of their brick and mortar partners, can be had for an MSRP of $29.99 when it arrives in November. Now, I haven't seen an indication on Amazon. It is November 30th, but I do think gaming stores, online retailers are going to have it earlier in November. I am not positive. Chaosium Inc. has only indicated a November release. So there is that. Now, I would think you'll be able to grab the PDF alone rather shortly from DriveThruRPG. I'm going to guess it'll be available for $19.99 or maybe $14.99. So, having said all of that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got No Time to Scream for Call of Cthulhu. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Chaosium Inc. were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the 3 adventures which are contained within, but I do want to give you a good idea of what you're going to find inside No Time to Scream. Now, as I just mentioned, this is an adventure supplement, so if you are a player and your keeper is thinking of picking this up, by all means, let them know about this video so that they can approach this and make a far more informed buying decision. But as a player, I would certainly recommend tune out now. There are going to be some minor spoilers. I'm not going to ruin all the big surprises of these 3 adventures, but there are going to be some spoilers. And I don't want the surprises of these tales ruined simply because you watched this video. All right, so let's jump on in. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take a peek at the credits page because quite a lot of people worked very hard to bring this to life. A lot of art throughout, a lot of various different artists. So let's give all these folks credit where credit is due. As I mentioned, there are 3 adventures contained within No Time to Scream, and we have a Lonely Thread, Bits and Pieces, and Aurora Blue. It's important to note that you can run these adventures with only the Call of Cthulhu starter set, the fantastic Call of Cthulhu starter set, the award-winning starter set, or of course, you can use the Keeper's Rulebook. So we have 3 adventures which are designed mainly for newcomers to Call of Cthulhu, both as players and as keepers. So we're going to actually start off with a little bit of an introduction and then some discussion of prepping for your games, actually playing Call of Cthulhu. So a little bit of game master advice in here for the keepers. I do appreciate that. I thought that was kind of cool. And then we will jump on into the 3 adventures. So these adventures are also designed to be run in a single session. There is some mention that each of these adventures could be run in an hour. I don't buy into that. I mean, granted, I suppose they could be run in an hour, but I think you'd be losing a lot of what makes these adventures unique because you're going to have to skip through a lot of stuff. And especially having this book designed for beginning keepers and players, you know, you're not going to be rocking through these in an hour. Now, having said that, I could see a Lonely Thread taking maybe 2.5 hours. And then we also have Bits and Pieces, probably close to 2.5, 3 hours. And then the final adventure, Aurora Blue, I think you want to take a full session. And I'll also say, I think that adventure would make for an excellent campaign launching pad. I'll talk about that as I talk about each of the adventures, but I think that one will be a bit longer. So the first adventure is A Lonely Thread, and in it, the player characters have been invited to spend a weekend at this Miskatonic University professor's cabin in the woods. The player characters are all strangers. They don't know each other. They all come from different walks of life as well. But this professor is pretty famous, and each of the player characters is looking to ingratiate themselves with this professor for their own different reasons. There are 4 pre-generated characters for each of these adventures. They are pretty unique. They are pretty useful. And some of them have pretty cool backstories as well. So what's going on here is this professor has actually been taken over by an alien parasite, which actually attaches itself to the professor's back and rides along on him. So it's kind of a mass of tentacles and veins and ropey material. It sort of reminded me a little bit of Robert Heinlein's Puppet Masters, to be honest. And this alien parasite doesn't only control the professor's motor functions, but also their mental functions. So, one of the cool aspects of this adventure, which I like, is that the keeper is going to be challenged to role play this professor in a way where the alien parasite is trying to pass the professor off as, yeah, this is the guy you know, but the parasite doesn't really know much about humans and the backwoods of Massachusetts and things along those lines. It has kind of a high level understanding of the human race and civilization, but not the details. So I think that would be a lot of fun. And what you're supposed to be doing is you're supposed to be role playing the professor so that the players will begin to be suspicious. And then they will finally confront the professor. And that's when the alien parasite is going to go to work in trying to take out the player characters. There's also a big bad creature, which is in a cocoon, which, if the player characters take too long to figure out there's something amiss with the professor and they don't get into a confrontation so that they can search this cabin, this beast will emerge and life will be far, far more difficult for the player characters. To be honest, I found this adventure to be all right. There really isn't much going on in it, but as I had pointed out, I do think it is pretty interesting that the keeper is going to be trying to role play this professor, but they also want the characters at some point to piece things together. It's just now there's no way this is the professor we've come to spend the weekend with. So that is A Lonely Thread. Here we got our pre-gens. And then we move on to Bits and Pieces. And before I talk about this adventure, I will mention, as far as the production quality for No Time to Scream, it is excellent. Artwork throughout, a vast majority of it is evocative. It is spooky. I know as of late, we have seen some of the artwork in Call of Cthulhu become a bit, I guess I would say, pedestrian. I don't want to say generic, but not real scary. Or it's more focused on, oh, it's the reaction of the investigators as opposed to focusing in on the horror. As you can see from this piece of artwork, that is not going to be the case with much of what's in No Time to Scream. I do appreciate that because this is a horror role-playing game. This is a Lovecraftian mythos game. I want that sort of artwork without being total gross out art. So Bits and Pieces is kind of a goofy adventure. This is a very pulpy adventure. So what essentially happens is this doctor that the player characters know, once again, all the player characters are strangers to each other, most likely. They are tied to this doctor, and the doctor has flipped out and called each of the player characters just completely incomprehensible what they're trying to tell them. And each of the player characters decides, hey, they need to check in on this doctor. So essentially, this doctor has stumbled across a corpse that is reanimating. And there are some ties, I guess I would say, to Herbert West Reanimator to this, although it's really not discussed in the adventure. It does have a very Herbert West vibe to it. And this doctor is actually part of the staff of a teaching hospital at Miskatonic University. And he just becomes fascinated by this corpse. And he's just studying this corpse and experimenting with this corpse. And all his other duties are being neglected. So he's fired from this hospital. Weirdly enough, it's mentioned that he's lost his license to practice, but this is all just taken place over a few weeks. And the reason why he's been dismissed from the hospital is because he was ignoring his duties for a few days. I'd say it's not very realistic to say, oh, the doctor has lost his license to practice because of that. Personally, I would drop that. I would not include it. I would say, the doctor is snapped because, for one, he's lost his access to this reanimated corpse that he is now obsessing over. And he's also lost his position at the hospital. I think that would cause his mind to snap. It doesn't make sense that he would have lost his practice or license to practice just simply over something fairly minor like that. So what'll happen is the player characters will go to the hospital, and then there are all these reanimated parts of the body that are loose. And the player characters are trying to make sure that they do not escape the hospital. Thus, the title, Bits and Pieces. As I said, this is kind of goofy. This is very pulpy. Some of the set pieces with, no pun intended, with the various different body parts are kind of silly. They really don't make sense. Like the head is trying to make a phone call, and I understand it's probably trying to use its tongue to dial the phone, but come on. Like, how does a torso move around? What is it? Just rolling? And like I said, it's kind of weird, kind of bizarre. I would say running this adventure would be more of a break from the, say, usual high tension campaign adventures. If you're an established keeper who's running a campaign, regardless, or maybe you're just running some interconnected adventures with your group, maybe for Halloween or maybe as a special treat, you do a one shot with this adventure, just going really over the top, then I could certainly see running this. As written, it's just, like I said, it's silly, it's weird, doesn't make logical sense, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't be at least an entertaining session of gaming. Now, in my opinion, I think the standout adventure of Call of Cthulhu, No Time to Scream, is Aurora Blue. I do believe that this is written by Bridget Jeffries with an assist by Mike Mason. And I will tell you right now, this is the sort of adventure that we sign up for Call of Cthulhu to play. Its tone and theme is quite different than the first adventures. This is an adventure that is going to be aimed at more mature gamers, which I certainly appreciate. There are some topics that might be a little tricky at your game table, so you want to be prepared for that. But this adventure is excellent. It's practically worth the price of admission alone just for this adventure. And essentially, what's going on here is the player characters are all persons of color, and they are prohibition agents who have been sent to find out where this strange blue liquor is originating from. And at the start, it's thought that it's actually coming from Canada. But this liquor is delicious, it's addicting, and it can be very lethal. So the player characters have found that it's actually originating out of Alaska. So the adventure takes place sort of in the mountainous region, kind of like almost like backwoods of Alaska. And there is a color that has landed, and it's, of course, mutating the flora and fauna as well as the humans in the area. And that's part of what's making this liquor so delicious and addicting, and of course, lethal. And it's called Aurora Blue. This is an excellent adventure. This adventure is going to take up a full session if you want to get the most out of it. Could you race through this in 2 hours? Sure, I guess you could. As far as the pre-generated characters in here, there are some sanity effects that take place, which are tied specifically to those characters. So this isn't necessarily an adventure that you would want to just roll up new characters for, because the pre-gens do tie into this really nicely. Funny enough, I think this would be a great starting point, a launch pad for an ongoing Call of Cthulhu campaign. Because in essence, the investigators are kind of being set up to fail in this mission because they're expendable types of people, at least according to the government at this time. So really, really nicely done. And of course, this is another Call of Cthulhu adventure where, you know, the players aren't going to go head to head with a color out of space. It's just not going to happen. So, of course, your players are going to have to come up with interesting ways to solve the problems that are present in Aurora Blue. Like it a ton. Now we're just going to wrap up with various different handouts for the players. So we've got the player maps. And as you can see, these handouts are very, very well done. And that is a peek inside No Time to Scream for Call of Cthulhu from Chaosium Inc. Let's swing on over to the other camera because I'm going to share some final thoughts and give this a review score. So, as I mentioned, out of the three adventures, my absolute favorite is Aurora Blue. I think it is a complete knockout. It is that good. As I mentioned, I'm not kidding. It's a sort of adventure that folks who've been playing or running Call of Cthulhu for an extended period of time, like myself, really love to see from Chaosium Inc. or even a third-party publisher. It is that good. Now, the first adventure, I think, is fine. It's okay. It's got kind of an alien vibe to it, more alien than mythos, really, but that's cool. That's all right. So that one's okay. The bits and pieces, I think, is silly. I probably wouldn't run it, at least with my gang, because right away they'd be sitting there going, okay, so how did that torso get there? Okay, how did the arms set up that trap for us? Because that's what these set pieces mainly are kind of traps that some of the body parts set up for anybody who's pursuing them as they're all attempting to get out of this hospital in whatever possible way they can. If you want to bust out the Pulp Cthulhu rules and use those and make things just a lot more over the top, campy even. Yeah, can see it being fun, but like I said, it's not really my thing. But all in all three of the adventures together, I will say I would certainly recommend No Time to Scream for Call of Cthulhu for established keepers as well as newcomers to Call of Cthulhu. Once again, I think that third adventure is fantastic and it really does lift up this compilation, this anthology of tales. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Call of Cthulhu No Time to Scream a 7 out of 10. I like it. Certainly love that last adventure for sure. So I will give it my recommendation, and it should be added to your collection. I would say if you're brand new to Call of Cthulhu, maybe you've picked up the starter set and you're looking for more content that you don't need to be really experienced to get the most out of, your mileage is going to vary a little bit. I think you would score it a little bit higher than I have as far as my review score. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. And until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.